Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming out to the first session on Friday. So we have two talks today, one at 9 and one at 9:15, some different case studies we're going to be sharing with you. So first we have Sarah Parks, who's the project manager of the Boston Furniture Archive at the Winterthur, am I saying that right? Winterthur Museum, Garden, and Library in Wilmington, Delaware. And today she's going to be discussing the development of the archive, which is a free online resource for the study of historic furniture.
Good morning, and thank you for persevering and getting up early despite the thrills of karaoke and everything else that was happening last night. I am here from the Winterthur Museum, Garden, and Library, and I am here representing not the technologists in the room, but the curatorial types, the object people, the folks who sometimes get really terrified when someone says the word digital. So I came here for the first time last year, no real background in the subject matter here, and wanted to speak today about my experience as someone kind of outside this sector coming in. In 2012, the Winterthur Museum joined 10 other cultural institutions in 4 centuries of Massachusetts furniture, a 2-year collaboration to explore and celebrate furniture made in Massachusetts through exhibitions, symposia, lectures, and publications. The Boston Furniture Archive began in 2013 as one of the products of this collaboration. The curators involved in 4 centuries wanted to create a free website that would provide access to photos and metadata documenting furniture made in Boston from 1630 to 1930. And I do promise that we're more than just chairs, but I show these images to reflect the fact that we're really trying to look at the full breadth of furniture production, not just the high-style things you tend to see in decorative arts galleries, but the schoolhouse furniture, the everyday stuff as well. The archive takes advantage of the resources of the Winterthur Library, especially its decorative arts photographic collection. This collection began in the 1950s as a repository of photographic prints and data sheets documenting decorative arts objects with known makers. We're digitizing the Boston material in this collection, making it available online for the first time. You no longer have to come to Winterthur, get special permission, and dig through these filing cabinet drawers. That is our goal. In addition to existing records, the archive is generating new documentation. We work with partner institutions, primarily small public collections, to photograph and catalog their furniture. Each summer, we train a team of 3 or 4 graduate students who spend 3 months working in sites across eastern Massachusetts. And as you can see here, they see a lot of the unexpected surfaces in museum exhibitions. When I was hired as project manager in July 2013, I was given a budget, the goals I've already mentioned, and a 2-year timeline. With my colleagues, I quickly established several tenets that guided our subsequent work. First, the content needed to balance depth and accessibility. And here I mean accessibility as comprehensibility. We want to provide information useful to furniture scholars doing research, but also accessible to the person who saw a rerun of Antiques Roadshow last night and now really wants to learn about tilt-top candle stands. Second, photographs and text are equally important to us. In an ideal world, they would convey the same information, but in reality, they're very complementary. Third, we see the archive as a research and discovery tool as opposed to the final word on an object. We want people to use the archive to learn about the existence of a piece and then go to the museum, the historical society, the library to see the piece in person. So for us, the final destination is not the screen. The first 9 months of the project really focused on creating structure and methods. It was tempting for us to pick up the tape measure and the camera and go running out to sites X, Y, and Z, but we decided instead to focus on structuring data prior to collection as opposed to going back and investing a lot in editing following collection. And this has worked out very well for us. Our primary structural challenge was to balance 3 competing interests: the depth of information the curators wanted, user-friendly content for a broad audience, and the sheer practicality of compiling and editing this material with just one full-time staff member and 2 years. We took a process-oriented approach with clearly defined metadata fields, published and custom-built controlled vocabularies, and systematic approaches to even the so-called free entry fields. So even if a field isn't truly controlled, we do prescribe terms, we prescribe how things are actually described in terms of design or construction. As a general practice, we looked to existing systems and in-house expertise before seeking outside solutions. There were sometimes really excellent reasons to push boundaries and go in new directions, but there were also compelling reasons to stay a little closer to our institutional norms. I looked at a range of database options for the back end of the system, but ultimately chose a database that was already in use in our library, that our IT folks were used to using, that our finance department was already paying for. The institution had invested such time and resources in this system that it made me relatively confident that our grant-funded project would not be immediately orphaned and obsolete when the active funding ended. So we were really looking toward the long term. In other shameless borrowing, we looked to such things as the punch card systems that we still had squirreled away in various offices in the institution. So looking at how keywords, how other descriptive data had previously been organized. And these cards were actually in active use until about 6 months ago. Our 2-year project has now grown into a 5-year project. The key to funding this extension has been our collaboration with other institutions. These partnerships take a variety of forms. We bring our catalogers to encyclopedic collections to hone their understanding of design. We work with tiny volunteer-run historic houses to identify their Boston-made furniture. And increasingly, we are sharing and adapting our cataloging methodologies to help institutions working with collections other than furniture. I think one of the reasons we've been able to work so well with very small institutions is that we're a digital project that relies on a lot of analog processes. So everything that we end up putting into Google Drive that eventually makes its way into the database began on a piece of paper. On a logistical level, this has given us more flexibility in terms of where we work. So we have a lot of experience in sites and historic homes that don't have electricity, for example. So lots of interesting workarounds. One unexpected addition to the archive's online presence grew directly from our metadata structure and documentation process. We wrote a lot of definitions for our catalogers. And it became obvious that this wasn't information useful only to us, but really to the broader user base. So our fantastic partners on designing the website's front end, Hopscotch Design, helped us translate this content into an interactive learning tool for the website. So what did we do well? First, we did actually meet our 2-year deadline of launching the website in June of 2015. Between 2015 and 2018, our primary task is to get as many records as possible into the database. One unexpected success of the project is the way it served as a springboard for other projects at Winterthur. It's given our staff, management, and board a point of entry to thinking about other digital possibilities. Things like the complete digitization of all of those filing cabinet drawers worth of material. The archive may also be Winterthur's first foray into retrofitting for web accessibility, which is not something we have considered at all previously. We've built terrific partnerships with institutions that look pretty different from us, and we hope that these relationships will be sustained through other types of work, not just furniture. And finally, we're thrilled that some of our partners have been able to leverage their participation in the archive into things like grant funding for object conservation, revised interpretation and collections management plans, and greater investment in their collections from their board and staff. I'll offer just a couple of cautionary notes. First is to take the amount of time you think you'll spend editing and multiply it by at least a factor of 10. Even when we had a lot of systems in place to define fields and specify vocabularies, there was a lot of spot checking, a lot of revision that happened. All of our front-end website customizations are built so that we can update them in-house, but we've discovered that that doesn't necessarily mean that we do it with any regularity, so to be sure to build in that part of the timeline. And frankly, I also wish I had found MCN earlier. I promise this is not a paid advertisement. But if you put a bunch of catalogers in the room, a bunch of curators in the room, you're going to have very strong opinions about how databases function. I think we've done a good job at building on that expertise. We didn't do such a good job at thinking about the aspects of digital work that are going to be much more obvious to the folks who do that type of work on a regular basis. So we didn't think about things like web accessibility. We didn't give a lot of thought to metrics for evaluation. So I think that opening up that conversation earlier would be very beneficial. So finally, just to say that for the curators, for the other object people who I hope are here or at least might listen to this later on, please don't let your lack of technical knowledge and confidence stop you from taking on this type of project. Not only will you be creating new content and making it accessible in new ways, but you'll be gaining new skills and perspectives that will absolutely inform your next exhibition, publication, or program. We succeeded by building on the existing strengths of our institution. In our case, we started with a group of really passionate furniture geeks. But you might be able to build on a particular methodology or a particular technical expertise. We found it's really easy to get hung up and hesitant about the knowledge that we don't have, and it becomes a lot easier if you start thinking about this in terms of just a reframing or an extension of what you're already doing. And finally, I would encourage you to think about your projects in terms of processes and relationships rather than specific end products. I think this is a theme I've heard a lot over the past 3 days. Boston craftspeople produced amazing furniture, and we've done a great job of highlighting it, but I think the true successes of the project have been the relationships we've built and the methodologies that we have developed and begun to share. So thank you, and I'm happy to take questions.
Does anyone have any questions?
Please.
Thank you for your panel of the curatorial staff. It's great to hear that someone else is thinking of these. I'm wondering if there's any more traditional curatorial projects that you see growing out of the Boston Furniture Archive.
Okay.
Do you mind repeating the
Sure.
question?
So the question was about what other more traditional curatorial projects would grow out of the archive. Our curators have gotten really excited about the kind of comparative possibilities. So one of the great things is that we're starting to find connections between pieces at sites, miles apart. Curators didn't necessarily know the other site existed, much less what was there. And so I think that model has become very attractive. So our curatorial staff is thinking about things like projects looking at design influences, and if you can trace a particular design source and look how it is manifest in ceramic and textile and glass, and kind of being able to take a more holistic look at some of this material.
Anyone else?
Thanks.
Thank you.